At least 3 killed in Houthis' attack on ship. And Russian missile lands near Zelensky and visiting Greek Prime Minister. Good afternoon and salam Malaysia Badani. You're watching World Today. I'm Brenda Lepol. A missile fired by Yemen's Houthis group hit a bulk carrier in the Gulf of Aden, with the crew reporting at least 3 people dead and 4 wounded. The Iran-backed group claimed responsibility for the attack, with a military spokesperson confirming it in a televised address. The Houthis have been targeting merchant vessels transiting the vital Red Sea trade route for months and have previously hit ships in the area. But the deaths on Wednesday appear to be the first fatalities resulting from such an attack. An anti-ship ballistic missile struck the Barbados-flagged Liberian-owned True Confidence, after which its crew reported the fatalities and significant damage to the ship. The U.S. Central Command said the crew abandoned the ship and coalition warships responded and are assessing the situation. Houthi military spokesman Yahya Sari, meanwhile, said that the True Confidence was targeted with multiple missiles after the ship's crew rejected warning messages from the Houthis. They began attacking ships in the Gulf of Aden and the Red Sea in November. A campaign, they say, is intended to signal solidarity with Palestinians in the devastating Israel-Hamas war. South Africa has asked the International Court of Justice, ICJ, to order additional emergency measures against Israel, which it says is breaching the measures already in place. In its application, South Africa warned that Palestinians in Gaza were facing starvation and asked the court to order that all parties cease hostilities. In a statement, the South African presidency warned that the people of Gaza cannot wait as the threat of all-out famine has now materialized. It said the court needs to act now to stop the imminent tragedy by immediately and effectively ensuring that the rights it has found are threatened under the Genocide Convention are protected. South Africa also asked the court to order that Israel take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address famine and starvation in Gaza. It added that the ICJ, also known as the World Court, should take these measures without scheduling a new round of hearings because of the extreme urgency of the situation. In January, the court ordered Israel to refrain from any acts that could fall under the Genocide Convention and to ensure its troops commit no genocidal acts against Palestinians, after South Africa accused Israel of state-led genocide in Gaza. In a related development, European Commissioner Janez Lenarčič said the Palestinian death toll in the Gaza Strip under Israeli attacks for 5 months is intolerable. He pointed to the fact that the death toll being reported is over 30,000 people in 5 months, which means the average death toll is 200 per day. Lenarčič also stressed that there is massive shortage of food, especially in the northern Gaza, and the European Commission is doing everything for an immediate ceasefire. He also called for additional land crossings, especially to the north of Gaza.
There are some challenges with regard to the maritime corridor that need to be addressed, namely the drop-off point or the unloading point in Gaza, where there is at the moment no port facility.
Israel has imposed a crippling blockade of the Gaza Strip, leaving its population, particularly residents of northern Gaza, on the verge of starvation. According to the United Nations, the Israeli war has pushed 85% of Gaza's population into internal displacement, amid acute shortages of food, clean water and medicine, while 60% of the enclave's infrastructure has been damaged or destroyed. A deadly Russian missile strike on the Ukrainian port city of Odessa appeared to land near the motorcade of President Volodymyr Zelensky and the visiting Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis, who described the intense moment of the surprise attack.
Και ο πρόεδρος Ζελένσκι και το επιτελείο του μας έκαναν μια ξενάγηση εξηγώντας μας από τη μία την σημασία του λιμανιού για τις εξαγωγές της Ουκρανίας και από την άλλη δείχνοντάς μας τις σημαντικές ζημιές τις οποίες έχει υποστεί αυτή η κρίσιμη υποδομή όταν ακούσαμε κάποιες σιρήνες και λίγο μετά καθώς μπαίναμε στα αυτοκίνητά μας ακούσαμε και μια μεγάλη έκρηξη και νομίζω ότι αυτό για εμάς είναι η καλύτερη, η ζωντανότερη υπενθύμηση ότι εδώ γίνεται πραγματικός πόλεμος κάθε μέρα.
Ukraine's Navy said the attack on port infrastructure killed 5 people and left an unspecified number of wounded. Ukraine stepped up its own attacks behind Russian lines with the apparent killing of a Russian election official with a car bomb and a drone assault on a metals plant. Russia and Ukraine have increased aerial attacks as Moscow's troops advance on the front lines, and Kyiv faces a shortage of manpower and weapons. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un inspected field training of troops at a major military operations base in the western region of the country and ordered heightened readiness for war. The tour of the base, the location of which was not identified, comes after the start of annual combined military drills by US and South Korean forces on Monday in the south, with twice the number of troops taking part compared to last year. State KCNA news agency said Kim expected troops conducting actual maneuvers under conditions simulating actual war. Kim said the military must dynamically usher in a new heyday of intensifying the war preparations in line with the requirements of the prevailing situation. He said the army should steadily intensify the actual war drills aimed at rapidly improving its combat capabilities for perfect war preparedness. KCNA did not mention whether Kim directly referred to the drills by the US and South Korean military. Up next, Peru gets a new premier after graft scandal. Stay with us. Peruvian President Dina Boluarte has named center-right diplomat Gustavo Adrianzen as the new Prime Minister, a day after the prior Prime Minister stepped down amid corruption accusations. The 57-year-old Adrianzen previously served as Peru's representative to the Organization of American States in Washington. From this post, he defended the government during a crackdown on mass protests that erupted in December 2022 when Boluarte took office after former President Pedro Castillo tried to dissolve Congress and rule by decree, leading to his quick ouster and arrest. Apart from naming Adrianzen as the new premier, Boluarte also confirmed the rest of a current cabinet in their roles, including Economy Minister Jose Artista and Energy and Mines Minister Romulo Mucho. Former Prime Minister Alberto Otarola resigned after a local TV station released an audio recording where he can be heard attempting to influence the awarding of government work contracts, which critics slammed as illegal. Prosecutors said they will probe him for possible conflict of interest and illegal sponsorship. Otarola, however, has denied wrongdoing. The United Nations Security Council expressed its concern over the deteriorating situation in violence gripped Haiti as Washington ramped up pressure on absent Prime Minister Ariel Henry to secure a political settlement. Armed gangs who control swaths of the country launched a coordinated efforts to oust Henry last week, attacking the airport, prisons and police stations and threatening a full-scale civil war. In power since 2021, assassination of President Jovenel Moïse, Henry was due to leave office in February but instead agreed to a power-sharing deal with the opposition until new elections are held. Powerful gang leader Jimmy Barbecue Charizia warned on Tuesday that the worsening chaos would lead to civil war and mass bloodshed unless Henry stood down. At least 15,000 people have fled the worst-hit parts of Port-au-Prince, and United Nations Rights Chief Volker Turk said the situation was beyond untenable, with 1,193 people killed countrywide this year by gang violence. Security Council member, Malta's ambassador to the UN, Vanessa Fraser, said that every member country of the top security body shared the same concerns, that the security situation is obviously alarming. The Republican-led U.S. House of Representatives approved a deal to avert a partial government shutdown due to start this weekend, moving a long-running row over the federal budget one step closer to resolution.
The resolution is
5 months into the fiscal year, Congress still has not approved the 12 annual spending bills that make up the federal budget, with several departments facing deadlines of midnight on Friday night to keep the lights on. Wednesday, House votes to approve a $460 billion package, threshed out over months of intense bipartisan negotiations, takes the United States a step closer to keeping the government funded through the end of the fiscal year on 30th September. The bill, funding the Departments of Agriculture, Justice, Interior, Transportation, Housing, Veteran Affairs, Commerce and Energy, must still pass the Senate before President Joe Biden can sign it into law and avert a partial shutdown. However, the bill covers less than a third of overall discretionary spending, and some of the most contentious battles have been put off for a second bill that needs to get to Biden's desk by 22nd March. That tranche covers the military, border security, Congress, and various other federal departments and agencies.
policy priority.
Britain's beleaguered government announced a fresh tax cut for millions of workers as it tries to win round voters before a general election expected this year. In a budget update, Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt said the government would cut national insurance, a payrolls tax paid by employees and employers, by 2 percentage points from April, matching action he took in November. According to consultancy Capital Economics, it remains to be seen whether the next fiscal giveaway, worth almost £14 billion, would convince voters. The right-wing Conservatives, led by Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, have been in power since 2010, but are badly trailing the main opposition Labour Party in polls. Analysts said the tax cut was modest, as elevated inflation forces up repayments on state borrowing, undermining the government's ability to stimulate the recession-mired economy. Labour leader Keir Starmer slammed the budget as the last desperate act of a party that has failed, describing tax cuts as a Tory-con, as Britons face the highest tax burden for 70 years.
How's business so far this year? Things are picking up? Yeah? Yeah, people positive mood?
Thousands of people marched through Colombia's biggest cities to protest political, economic and social reforms, backed by President Gustavo Petro, as well as to demand action against deteriorating security. Demonstrators in capital Bogota marched with flags and placards emblazoned with slogans criticizing the president. The protests, which were peaceful, also took place in cities such as Medellin and Cali. According to the police, as of midday, some 52,000 people had taken part nationally. Leftist Petro was elected in 2022 on ambitious promises to fight poverty and inequality and end Colombia's 6 decades of internal conflict, which has killed at least 450,000 people. The government's biggest proposals, reforms targeting health, pensions, the labor system and education, have faced stiff opposition in Congress and from the opposition. While reform proposals are making their way through Congress, Petro lacks a majority among lawmakers after a tenuous coalition disintegrated last April. Petro, however, has defended the reforms, arguing they will benefit the country's poorest. Over in Mexico, protesters broke open a door to the presidential palace during a demonstration demanding justice for 43 students whose disappearance nearly a decade ago shocked the country. A few dozen protesters using a pickup truck smashed open an entrance to the National Palace while President Andrés Manuel López Obrador was holding a press conference inside. A handful of hooded demonstrators were then seen entering the building and security personnel responded to try to repel them. López Obrador described the incident as a very clear plan of provocation. Relatives of the missing students and supporters have carried out various protests in Mexico City, including a sit-in outside the National Palace demanding to meet with López Obrador. The president said a senior Interior Ministry official would receive them instead. The 2014 case of the students from a teacher training college in the violent southern state of Guerrero is considered to be one of the country's worst human rights atrocities. They had commandeered buses to travel to a demonstration in Mexico City before they went missing. Investigators believe they were kidnapped by a drug cartel in collusion with corrupt police, although exactly what happened to them is unclear.
Aproximadamente 10 elementos de la policía militar intentaban replegar el paso de los normalistas. Es difícil caminar en esta zona.
And in other news, the head of the federal investigation into a troubled January flight on a Boeing 737 MAX jet blasted the aviation giant for not providing key information quickly. 2 months into the probe of the 5th of January Alaska Airlines flight, the National Transportation Safety Board still has not received key documents at the center of the investigation, or the names of some 25 Boeing employees who worked on the part in question. There were no serious injuries in the incident in which the Alaska Airlines flight made an emergency landing after suffering a blowout on a plane on the jet fuselage. The fuselage was built by Boeing contractor Spirit Aerosystems, but the problem is believed to stem from maintenance on the part performed at Boeing's Renton, Washington factory, in which the door plug is believed to have been removed and reinstalled. The National Transportation Safety Board says the head of the Boeing team working on the door plug has been out on medical leave. The agency has gotten nowhere with requests to Boeing for the additional 25 employees in the team. Boeing, which has consistently pledged transparency in response to the January incident, said it has deep respect for the agency as it defended its responsiveness. With respect to documentation, it said if the door plug removal was undocumented, there would be no documentation to share. The woman in charge of weapons on the set of the Alec Baldwin movie Rust, where a cinematographer was shot dead, was convicted of involuntary manslaughter. A jury in New Mexico took just over 2 hours to find Hannah Gutierrez guilty of the death of Helena Hutchins in October 2021. 10-day trial heard how, as the film's armorer, Gutierrez had been ultimately responsible for the use of live rounds on sets, a red line across the industry. Jurors had also heard how she had repeatedly failed to adhere to basic safety rules, leaving guns unattended on the sets of the budget western and allowing actors, including Baldwin, to wave the weapons around. Hutchins was shot by a live round fired from the Colt 45 that Baldwin was holding in a church on the New Mexico set. Director Joel Souza was wounded by the same bullet. Baldwin has repeatedly denied responsibility, insisting he did not pull the trigger on the gun, which should not have been loaded with a live round. His own involuntary manslaughter trial is expected in July. The tragedy sent shockwaves through Hollywood and led to calls for a complete ban on the use of weapons on movie sets. Industry insiders, however, insisted that rules were already in place to prevent such incidents and that those working on Rust had not followed them. Coming up in sports, Manchester City and Real Madrid reach Champions League quarters. Stay with us. Kicking off our sports segment with football, holders Manchester City cruise into the Champions League quarterfinals with a 3-1 victory over FC Copenhagen earlier this morning in their last 16 second leg. A 10th consecutive win in the competition that wrapped up a 6-2 aggregate triumph. City, who started the game with a 2-goal cushion, took care of business early with first-half goals by Manuel Akanji, Julian Alvarez and Erling Haaland. Akanji scored with City's first chance, volleying in Alvarez's corner in the 5th minute. Alvarez scored his own 4 minutes later, thanks to calamitous goalkeeping by Kamil Grabara, who let the City forward shot slip through his hands seconds after Rodri pinged an effort off the crossbar. Former Southampton player Mohamed El Younusi pulled one back for the Danish champions in the 29th minute, but City's goal-scoring machine Haaland slotted home a low, hard shot through two defenders seconds before half-time, his 29th goal of the season across all competitions. City will find out their quarter-final opponents in the draw on 15 March. In another match, Real Madrid withstood an onslaught from RB Leipzig to secure a 1-1 draw in the second leg of the Champions League last 16 tie that sent them through to the quarter-finals with a 2-1 aggregate victory. Leipzig kept threatening to score, with Billy Orban missing twice in the second half after shooting wide. In the second half, Rodrigo replaced Eduardo Camavinga and suddenly Real were playing with more purpose. Real appeared to have put the tie to bed when Toni Kroos stole the ball and fed Jude Bellingham at the halfway line, who took the ball up the Leipzig boss. He slipped a pass to Vinicius Jr., who had cut in from the left into the center circle before rifling a shot into the left-hand corner. That goal only seemed to fire up Leipzig, who equalized within 3 minutes when Orban got in front of Nacho to score with a stooping header from a cross by David Raum. In the final 20 minutes, in which several yellow cards were handed out, Real were playing with fire and were under repeated pressure in their own box, with goalkeeper Andre Lunin forced to make several crucial saves. Leipzig almost took the game to extra time when Dani Olmo saw his shot ricochet off the bar in added time. Ultimately, Real did just enough to qualify for yet another quarter-final. In Asian Champions League, Yokohama F. Marinos will take a 2-1 lead into the second leg of their Asian Champions League quarter-final against Shandong Taishan, after Chen Pu's late strike kept the Chinese hosts' hopes of a last four place alive. Anderson Lopez put Marinos in front after 7 minutes, and Jan Mateos doubled the visitors' advantage in the 69th minutes as Harry Kewell's side looked set to take a comfortable cushion into the return next Wednesday. But Shandong deservedly pulled one back when Chen slammed home his 31st minute strike after Choi Kang-hee's side had seen Mateos Pato hit the post early in the second half. Lopez pounced to give the former J-League champions the lead, the striker capitalizing on the inability of the Shandong defense to clear to slot his shot past Wang Dalei into the bottom corner. Pato hit the post from close range 8 minutes into the second half as Shandong pushed to level, but Marinos doubled their advantage 21 minutes from time when Jan Mateos calmly placed the ball into the net from the edge of the area. Shandong's desperation grew as the final whistle approached, and Chen hit an acrobatic right foot effort beyond pop a minute into stoppage time to keep the tie in the balance. The winners will face Jeonbuk Motors or Ulsan Hyundai in the semis, with the first leg between the South Korean teams ending in a 1-1 draw on Tuesday. Moving on to tennis, Andy Murray sealed a straightforward 6-3, 6-2 victory over Belgian qualifier David Goffin in the first round at Indian Wells in California. The three-time major winner put in a solid serving performance, winning 85% of his first serve points while not facing a single break point. The victory sees Murray's head-to-head record with Goffin improve to 8-love, having first played the 2017 ATP Finals champion in 2010. Murray is now 31-15 across 16 appearances at the ATP 1000 event in the California desert, with his best run coming in 2009 when he reached the final before losing to Rafa Nadal. Having started 2024 with 4 straight first-round exits, the 36-year-old Scotsman is now 3-6 for the season and will meet 5th seed Andrei Rublev in the second round on Friday.
Isu sukan tempatan di pelbagai arena, pelbagai gelanggang. Pencapaian dan kontroversi akan dikupas dan dibincangkan dalam Planet Sukan setiap Ahad 10 malam di TV1 dan saluran sukan RTM. Saksikan juga secara penstrima langsung di RTM Klik.
And in cycling, Colombian Santiago Buitrago took the first mountain stage of Paris-Nice after an accelerating finish in the Bougelai wine-growing region that went down to the last kilometre. In the 183-kilometre fourth stage from Chalon-sur-Saône to Mount Broye featured 6 Category 2 climbs and a Category 1 in the shape of the 7.3% Col du Fut de Avena, 20 kilometres before the finishing line. Going pedal to pedal with Luke Clapp of Jayco Alula, Team Bahrain's Buitrago claimed the imposing 3-kilometre final ascent of Mount Broye to take his first ever Paris-Nice stage victory. Matteo Borgado and Christian Scaroni broke away from the leading pack on the ascent of Col de Duby, with just over 50 kilometres left to race before the Italian showed the Frenchman a clean set of wheels to streak out on his own as the summit approached. Despite coming second, Clapp claims the overall leader's jersey from Brendan McNulty, who drops into third just behind stage winner Buitrago. Frenchman Bourgadou of Total Energies held on to the polka dot jersey as the race's best climber and increased his tally to 28 points, 7 ahead of Scaroni in second place. Remco Evenepoel on quick step, one of the favourites to win the race, attacked twice in the last kilometre to finish fourth in the stage and move up to fifth in the general ranking. Inclement weather is forecast to set in over the weekend, and the penultimate stage of the race on Saturday could be modified with snowfall expected at the finish line in Argonne. Former world number 1 John Rahm said the official World Golf Ranking (OWGR) system is no longer fit for purpose. A day after LIV Golf formally withdrew its application to have players receive world ranking points from its tournaments. LIV golfers applied for recognition from OWGR, which determines entry into golf's 4 majors in July 2022, but was rejected last October, mainly because its format had only 54 holes and with no cuts. Masters champions Rahm, who was number 1 for 52 weeks, currently sits third despite making the switch to LIV Golf in December. Rahm highlighted Joaquin Niemann's rise as an example of why the ranking system was out of touch after the 76th ranked Chilean, who won the LIV Golf event in Jeddah, received invites to 3 majors, the Masters, the British Open and the PGA Championship.
I think it's a beginning of a positive thing.
Yeah.
Right, they're now giving one player a chance. Before you know it, there'll be a solution to all this, right? I think it's just opening the door slightly to a larger conversation.
Former US champion Bryson DeChambeau, who also made the switch to LIV Golf, said what is right is in the best interest of the game and everyone should focus on having the best players at the majors.
TNB Liga Hoki Malaysia 2024. Aksi perjuangan terus diledakkan dalam memburu tahta kejuaraan utama Liga Hoki Malaysia. Khamis 7 Mac, perlawanan separuh akhir Maybank bertemu THT 6 petang serta UiTM HAKPT bertemu Tenaga Nasional Berhad 8 malam di saluran OK dan saluran sukan RTM. Saksikan juga secara penstreaman langsung di RTM Klik.
And that wraps up World Today. In our top story, at least 3 killed in Houthis' attack on ship. Do join us again tonight, Malaysia Tonight, coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm Brendan Lapal. Thank you for watching. Take care.